Have you ever had an idea that just wouldn't leave you alone? Not because it was practical, not because it made financial sense, but just because you saw it and you couldn't stop imagining what it might become? Now, before we get into what I'm going to talk about today, I want to share with you is that I've been revamping, I've been revising all sorts of stuff, and I would love for you to go visit my website, kellyorchard.com, and see how I've put all this courtyard concept together. So as of this video, I'm now email subscriber list gets a newsletter. Substack talks about the storytelling and how I'm working out this novel. And then these videos are going to be for creative writing, mental health, and all those other things that I would share, plus my travels with Kismet. Several years ago, I was working with a record producer on a different project with a License to Be Badass, a badass certification class. And while we were working together, I was also simultaneously trying to acquire a small radio station that I had discovered had the potential to be something really fantastic in the area that I was living in. And so I was talking to engineers, which was basically essentially my dad and some of his buddies. I was talking to some of my old radio friends who might want to come to work for me at this radio station. I was thinking through logistics. One of the challenges that I knew was going to happen with this radio station was once I required it, it was going to need a new location. It was going to have to move it from where it was. So at the same time, this record producer that I was working with, he also had purchased an old historic cafe property in a small downtown district that was being revitalized. And what most people would see as an abandoned building, he saw as potential. It was going to be demolished. He saw it as a historic landmark and wanted to preserve it. So every time we talked, he'd ask me the same question: what would you do with the cafe? At first I was like, why are you asking me? What do I know? Really, what do I know? I don't know anything. And so I didn't really think much about it. But then one day I just answered him. I told him about the radio station I was trying to acquire and what we should do with it. I think we should put the radio station there. You could build a recording studio. Cafe would become a gathering place. And in between them, we could put a courtyard where people could meet, listen to live music, share ideas, and build a community. What we could do is use your recording artists as the bands, play the live music, broadcast on the radio. I could get sponsors to cover it and pay for it. It could be like a catered meal for their fans that would come to watch them play a gig and get a chance to be on the radio. Seemed like a really good business plan. And the more that I described it to him, the more real it became. Not just for him, but for me also, because I was moving along with the station acquisition. And I wasn't just imagining a building, I was imagining an entire ecosystem. And it was a place where music, radio, creativity, and community all lived together in real life, not imaginary. And for a while, it looked like it actually might happen. And the station deal was progressing. The business plan was taking shape. People were getting really excited. We were talking about format. We were talking about different promotions that we could do, different things that we could even get involved in the community. And then the seller decided that they weren't ready to sell. They were going to keep the station. And the deal fell apart. But you know what? Looking back, it was actually a blessing in disguise because it was, I think they pulled out of the deal about a month before we all got notified that we were on lockdown for COVID. You know what? The station would have fell apart. It wouldn't have been successful anyway. Even though the news was disappointing, I realized it was a blessing in disguise. But you know what? Even after the deal died, the idea didn't. I couldn't let it go. I wouldn't let it go. I kept thinking about the courtyard and the radio station and the recording studio and the musicians and the people that would gather there. And eventually I realized something. You know what? If I can't build it in real life, I can tell a story about it. I can make it up in a story. And that is the origin of how the Radio and Records Cafe was born. Now, the Radio and Records Cafe actually almost was going to be written first, but I had a friend of mine tell me that I needed to write Dead Air the Day the Music Died first. So this story idea, this story origin is also several years old. So what started out as a business idea eventually became a trilogy, because I realized as I was making the notes for Radio and Records Cafe story, that the two characters needed much more of a story to tell. And they are not me. It's not the record producer. It was just the business idea that developed this story. And honestly, it's grown into something much larger than I even ever imagined. So if there was anything I would want you to remember about this is that sometimes the thing that doesn't happen creates space for something even better immediately, but probably sometimes years later. But not every closed door is a dead end. Next week, I'll talk about something that has completely changed the way I create AI as a creative partner, and why I don't believe technology replaces creativity. I think it can amplify it. If you enjoyed this conversation, I'd appreciate if you'd like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might enjoy it too. And if you'd like to go deeper, I invite you to join me in the Courtyard on Substack. That's where I share the writing journey behind the Radio and Records Cafe trilogy, along with reflections on creativity, leadership, resilience, travel, and the stories that shape our lives. You'll find the link below, and I'd love to have you join us there.